He's considered as the weakest hunter in the world, but after almost dying in a dungeon, he gains the unique ability to level up, which allows him to become the strongest. 10 years earlier, mysterious gates started appearing all over the world, releasing countless monsters, and they were immune to conventional weapons, so humanity struggled against them. But a group of humans awakened special powers, allowing them to defeat the monsters, and they became known as the Hunters. They're given rankings based on their abilities, and we learn that once their powers awaken, it's impossible for them to level up, so the only way for them to get stronger is to upgrade their equipment. We see a hunter named Kim as a man named Park approaches him, revealing that his wife is pregnant, so he needs to make money by raiding the dungeon. They notice a boy named Jinwoo approaching, and everyone greets him, as Park wonders if he's someone important. But we learn that he's only a ranky hunter, and he's considered as the weakest in the world, because he was almost killed while trying to clear the easiest dungeon. A girl named Jui approaches him, wondering what happened to his face. So he explains that he got injured while raiding a ranky dungeon, because there was no healer in their party, saying his companions were so strong that they didn't need one. Jui thinks they're selfish, but he blames himself for being weak, saying he's used to being treated as a burden. The leader Songchi calls them for a meeting, and everyone is glad to work with him, because he's known as a capable hunter. They're about to enter the gate, as Kim tells Jinwoo to be careful, thinking he might get injured again. We learn that he's using a generic knife as his weapon, because that's all he can afford, but he's determined to succeed, and he enters the gate. We meet the chairman Gunyi, as he reveals that hunters make profit by selling essence stones, which can be obtained by defeating monsters, and they're considered as valuable resources because they can be used to craft powerful equipment. He adds that mana crystals can also be obtained in the dungeon, and they serve the same purpose, but they're not as potent as the stones. The government plans to use the stones and crystals as a new power source because they're incredibly efficient and they don't pollute the atmosphere. We return to Jinwoo as he obtains his first essence stone, but a goblin attacks him, so he tries to fight back, but his knife shatters, and he ends up getting stabbed. Park kills the goblin, and Jui helps Jinwoo, who watches as their companions defeat the monsters. They're able to defeat the dungeon boss, and everyone celebrates, but Jui wonders why Jinwoo is still a hunter, saying she's worried about him, because he always gets injured. They collect the loot, but they appear to be disappointed, thinking it's not enough, but a hunter calls everyone, showing them a tunnel, as they realize that it's a double dungeon. They know that they will find more loot inside, but Songchi reveals that they can't explore it, because they need to wait for orders from the Hunters Association. But Kim suggests breaking the rules, so that they can collect the loot. Songchi thinks it's too risky, saying they should take a vote, but half of them oppose the idea, including Jui. Jinwoo is the only one that hasn't voted, and he's going to break the tie, so he realizes that his decision is going to affect the outcome. He considers that he could end up dying, but he thinks about his current situation, knowing his father is missing and his mother is in the hospital. His sister can't help him because she's still a student, so it's up to him to provide for her, knowing he needs the money to make ends meet, so he decides to enter the tunnel. Meanwhile, the officials are testing the powers of the new hunters to determine their rankings. We meet the guildmaster of the Hunters Guild Choi, as he orders the officials to send offers to promising newbies, because they need more hunters in the guild. We see thieves stealing a bag, and they're about to escape, but a girl gets in the way, retrieving the bag, and causing them to crash. She returns it to the owner, and everyone recognizes her as the S-rank hunter Cha, but she doesn't like getting the public's attention, so she escapes from the scene. Back in the dungeon, the hunters explore the tunnel, as Jui questions Jinwoo's decision, reminding him that he almost died. He knows that she saved his life, and she tells him to show his gratitude by having dinner with her, causing him to become flustered. At that moment, they see a door, thinking the boss must be inside. But as they enter it, they realize that it's filled with statues, and Jinwoo sees one of them, realizing that it's bigger than the others, as everyone wonders why there are no monsters. They see an ancient tablet, which mentions the commandments of the temple, and Songchi reads it, revealing that it's telling them to worship and praise God, and prove their faith to him, or they won't be able to leave the room alive. But Jui notes that the huge statue appears to be watching them, and the door suddenly closes, causing everyone to panic. A hunter tries to leave, saying they shouldn't have entered the tunnel, but a statue attacks him, killing him in an instant, and everyone falls into despair, wondering how they're supposed to escape. Jinwoo thinks that the statues are too strong to be in a D-rank dungeon, and he looks at the huge statue, realizing that it's watching them. He recalls how he always has a brush with death during his raids because he can't keep up with the other hunters. But he never gave up, and he learned to compensate for his weakness by observing everything in detail. He can tell that they're in trouble, so he tells everyone to take cover as the statue fires an energy beam, destroying everything in its path. Everyone realizes that their lives are in danger, and Song-chi tells everyone not to move because it could trigger another attack. He approaches Jinwoo, wondering how he was able to sense the danger. He explains that it was just a gut feeling, but he realizes that Song-chi lost his arm, and he tells Jinwoo to help him stop the bleeding. So Jinwoo covers him with bandages, as he mentions that he was planning to ask for Jui's help. But she always freaks out when she experiences pressure, and this explains why she only joins easy raids, despite being a B-rank healer. Song-chi explains that he's been to B-rank dungeons, but he's never seen a monster as powerful as the statue, thinking it belongs to an S-rank dungeon. He recalls the commandments written on the tablet, and Jinwoo thinks that the huge statue is God. Song-chi knows that they're no match for it, so they need to find a way to escape. But a hunter mentions that he doesn't want to die, and he charges forward with ridiculous speed, but the statue attacks him, destroying him in an instant. Jinwoo realizes that it can kill them if it wanted to, wondering why it isn't attacking them. He recalls the writing on the tablet, asking Song-chi about it, so he mentions that the first commandment is to worship God. Jinwoo thinks that the dungeon has its own rules, and he stands up, as Song-chi tries to stop him, thinking he could get himself killed. But Song-chi realizes that he's determined to survive, and the statue of God prepares to attack him, but he bows his head, as he notes that it spared his life. So he tells everyone to prostrate themselves, saying it won't attack them if they keep their heads low. They follow his instructions, and the statue's eyes deactivate, but it suddenly starts smiling, so everyone becomes worried. But Park notes that it isn't doing anything, and everyone thinks they're safe. But it suddenly starts moving, walking towards them as they start to panic. Jinwoo reminds them that the second commandment is to praise God, and a man approaches the statue, claiming he knows what to do. He starts reciting a prayer, but it smiles at him as Jinwoo realizes that his plan isn't working. He gets crushed to death, and everyone starts running away as it chases after them. Park thinks about his family, knowing they're waiting for him to return, but he approaches a statue, and it starts moving, slicing him in half. Jinwoo thinks about the second commandment, realizing that the statues with weapons are killing his companions, and he sees statues with instruments, thinking they need to be activated, so he tells everyone to approach them. They follow his instructions, and the statues start playing the instruments, causing them to feel relieved, because their lives have been spared. Jinwoo approaches a statue with Jui, but it doesn't activate, and he realizes that it won't work if there are two people close to it. So he tells Jui to stay there, and he runs to activate the last one, but the statue of God starts pursuing him. It's about to crush him to death, and he manages to avoid it, but he gets blown away, activating another statue by accident. It attacks him, smashing the ground, and Jui thinks he's dead, but we see him crawling to the last one, refusing to give up, as the statue of God continues to pursue him. It stomps on him, but the last statue starts singing, and we see that he was able to activate it. So the statue of God spares him, returning to its throne, as he realizes that they have completed the second commandment. Jui approaches him, but she realizes that he lost his leg, so she tries to heal him, but she ends up reaching her limit. Everyone realizes that their companions are dead, and Kim blames Song-chi for everything, because he's the leader of the group. Their companions think Kim is being unfair, because he suggested breaking the rules, and they start blaming each other. But Song-chi takes responsibility, because he was the one who made the final call. An altar suddenly appears, as Jinwoo explains that the third commandment is to prove their faith to God, thinking they need to perform a human sacrifice to survive. Kim tells Song-chi to offer his life, because he's the leader of the group, and he agrees to this, so he approaches the altar. But a fire suddenly appears, so everyone becomes confused, and Jinwoo tells them to help him reach the altar, because he wants to examine it. As they approach it, more flames appear, and Jinwoo wonders if anyone will arrive to rescue them. but Song-chi explains that the gate is about to fully open, so nobody will be able to save them. We learn that a gate remains inactive for 7 days after it appears, but after that period, monsters will be able to enter the world in what's known as a dungeon break. So hunters are sent into the gate to prevent it from happening by defeating the dungeon boss, and Jinwoo realizes that if they fail, the statue of God will be able to enter their world, so they need to clear the dungeon at all costs. He advises everyone to approach the altar, and more flames appear as the altar activates, causing a ring of blue flames to surround it. The door opens, as everyone wonders if they can leave, but the statues start moving as a blue flame disappears. Everyone panics, but Jinwoo notes that the statues stop when he looks at them, and he tells everyone to keep their eyes open so that the statues won't be able to move. It appears to be working, but one of them panics, and she starts running away, causing a red flame to disappear. She manages to leave the room, and everyone wonders what's happening, because the commandment is to prove their faith. Jinwoo thinks it's a trap, but another one runs away, so he warns the others that they will have blind spots if more people leave. He thinks the blue flames serve as the timer, and the goal is to survive until they disappear, but Kim knows he isn't sure, because he has no evidence to support his theory. Kim thanks him for helping them survive, but he mentions that he has a family waiting for him, and he decides to run away. Jinwoo realizes that they can't stop all of the statues, and Song-chi tells Jui to escape with Jinwoo, but her legs stop moving because she has already spent all of her energy. So Jinwoo tells Song-chi to escape with her, saying he won't be able to run away because he only has one leg, and he gives her an essence stone, telling her to use it to buy dinner. She doesn't want to leave him, but Song-chi knocks her out and carries her away. Jinwoo is the only one left, knowing he doesn't stand a chance, but he takes a sword, planning to fight until his last breath. But the statues attack him, blowing him away, and he ends up losing an arm. He endures a brutal beatdown, and he lands on the altar as a statue prepares to strike him down. He notes that he doesn't want to die, so he starts crying, but the timer expires as he receives a system message asking him if he wants to become a player. He wakes up in a hospital, realizing that his body has been completely healed. He wonders if it was just a dream, but the manager of the Hunters Association surveillance team, Jinchul, enters his room. Jinchul explains that he was unconscious for the past 3 days, and he wonders what happened to Jui and Song-chi. Jinchul reveals that they survived, but Song-chi lost his arm, so he might be forced to retire as a hunter, and Jui is suffering from trauma, so she needs psychiatric care before she can join another raid. He reveals that the White Tiger Guild rushed to the dungeon because they were alerted by the survivors, but they never saw the statues, and Jinwoo was found lying on the ground. Everyone finds this strange, but they believe that the survivors are telling the truth because the remains of the other hunters were found on the scene. Jinchul thinks that an E-rank hunter could never survive the incident, so he believes that Jinwoo unlocked a new level of power through his second awakening. He pulls out a gadget, explaining that it will measure Jinwoo's magic, and he becomes excited, thinking he has become stronger. But as he touches it, we see that his score is 10, which is considered abysmal, because even the weakest hunters get a score of 70. So Jinchul explains that they were mistaken, and they leave the room, thinking he's as weak as a civilian. Jinwoo is disappointed with the result, but he wonders why they didn't inquire about the screen, because he can see it floating in his room. He wonders if he's the only one who can see it, and at that moment, his sister Gina arrives, revealing that she was worried about him. She tells him that she will quit school and get a job so that he can stop being a hunter because he always ends up in the hospital. He apologizes for making her worried, and he inquires about the screen, but she becomes confused because she can't see it. He asks her how she checks her messages in video games, and she tells him that he just needs to open the message box. So he mentions the message box, and the system recognizes his command, informing him that he has a daily quest. He thinks about how he has become a player, and Gina decides to let him rest, as he reads his notifications, realizing that the system is designed to assist him, but he will receive a penalty if he fails to comply. He accepts the daily quest, and the system gives him a simple workout routine, warning him that he will receive a penalty if he fails. But Jinwoo thinks it's impossible to complete it, because he's still in the hospital, so he decides to take a nap. Meanwhile, Jinchul reports to Gunyi, informing him that Jinwoo didn't undergo a second awakening. Gunyi mentions that the case is full of mysteries, thinking there's still much they need to learn about dungeons, so they decide to label it as a special case, which will require further evaluation. Choi orders Cha to become the instructor in a B-rank raid, saying it will serve as practical training for the new recruits. She thinks she isn't fit for the role, but he tells her that she just needs to fight, and everyone will learn from her example. Choi reveals that the Hunters Guild is one of the largest in the country, but they're nothing compared to the best guilds in the world. He knows that a hunter's rank can't be changed, but he thinks they can improve by working on their combat abilities. Jinwoo is sleeping on his bed, but the timer for the quest expires, and the system informs him that he has failed his quest. So the ground starts shaking, causing him to wake up, and he finds himself in the middle of the desert, wondering if he's dreaming. But he encounters a giant centipede, as the system tells him to survive for 4 hours, so he panics and he starts running away as the monster chases after him. But more centipedes appear, and he eventually becomes exhausted. He's about to get eaten, but the timer expires, so he returns to the hospital as the system informs him that he has completed the penalty quest. But he ends up collapsing, and the nurses enter his room, wondering what happened to him. We cut to Jui, as she's invited to join a D-rank raid, but she declines because she still hasn't recovered. She learns that Jinwoo is in the hospital, so she decides to visit him, but she hears the nurses complaining about his behavior, thinking he's insane because he just recovered, but he never stops training. Jinwoo takes a break, and we learn that every time he completes a daily quest, his body fully recovers, and he gains ability points, which he can use to increase his stats. We learn that he has an inventory screen, and he can learn skills, but he thinks his situation is weird, because he feels like he's playing a video game. He returns to his room, where he reveals that he gets a random loot box when he completes a daily quest. He opens it, causing a key to appear, as the system mentions that he can use it to access an instance dungeon in a subway. He becomes confused, because he doesn't know what an instance dungeon is, but he thinks the key will lead him to an event, which can help him get stronger. Jinwoo visits his mother in the hospital, and in a flashback from 4 years ago, his mother suddenly collapses, so they take her to the doctor. He explains that she's suffering from a rare condition known as the eternal sleep disease, which came into existence when the gates appeared. It's caused by continual exposure to mana, but it's incurable, so they decide to put her on life support. Jinwoo needs money to make ends meet, so he starts working at a construction site, but he suddenly awakens his powers, and he becomes qualified to work as a hunter. He becomes excited, knowing his life is about to change, but he realizes that he's so weak that he can't even defeat a goblin, and the other hunters look down on him, seeing him as a burden. Back in the present, Jinwoo continues his training, and he increases his strength. He heads to the subway, and he takes his key, using it to unlock the instance dungeon. He decides to enter it, thinking he can run away if it gets too dangerous, but the exit suddenly closes, as the system informs him that the only way to escape the dungeon is to defeat the boss, or use a teleportation stone. But he realizes he's in trouble, because he isn't sure if he can survive on his own. Jinwoo decides to explore the dungeon, and 3 goblins suddenly appear. He struggles to keep up with their movements, and he falls to the ground, as a goblin tries to stab him, but he dodges, and he launches a counterattack, killing the goblin in 1 hit. The others continue to attack him, but he easily defeats them, as he notes that he has become stronger. But a wolf suddenly appears, and it charges at him, shattering his knife. He realizes that it's stronger than the goblins, and his legs start trembling as he realizes that he's afraid. The wolf charges in, and it manages to scratch him, as he notes that he has no healer, so he's going to die if he suffers a fatal injury. He evades the wolf's attacks, as he notices that his body feels lighter than usual, and he manages to overcome his fear. He punches with all his might, knocking the wolf down, and he realizes that he was able to hurt it, because he focused on improving his strength. But the wolf recovers, and it lunges at him, so he tries to stop it with his fists, but he realizes that his attacks are working. So he starts running away, thinking he doesn't stand a chance, because he has no weapon. But at that moment, he recalls that he saw something in his inventory, so he opens it, and he takes a magic sword, as the wolf lunges at him, but he attacks it, slicing it in half. He wonders why he has the sword in his inventory, because he knows that it belongs to Kim, and it's too expensive for him to afford. But he decides not to think about it, and he notes that his wounds have healed. But 2 more wolves appear, as he realizes that his sword is stuck in the ground. So Jinwoo starts to panic, but as the wolves approach him, he manages to lift it, and he takes a swing, but the wolf is able to catch it. So he kicks it, causing it to weaken its grip, and he slices its head off. Seeing this, the other wolf decides to retreat, and as he rests, he realizes that he has reached level 2. He notes that he never leveled up by completing quests, so he realizes that actual combat allows him to gain experience. He notices that all of his stats have increased, thinking it's more efficient to get stronger by leveling up, because he acquires 5 points with each level, while the daily quests only give him 3 points. But Jinwoo realizes that he just defeated 5 monsters, thinking he shouldn't get carried away, and he checks for magic gems, but he finds an item instead. The system tells him that he found a shop, and he tries to buy something, but he realizes that he can't, because his level is too low. He decides to sell the item, allowing him to earn 20 gold, but he wonders how much it's worth in cash, thinking it isn't much, because he appears to be in an E-rank dungeon. He wonders how he can clear the dungeon, because he doesn't know where to find the teleportation stone, and he thinks he isn't strong enough to defeat the boss. But he thinks he might stand a chance if he continues to level up, and he encounters a pack of wolves, but he isn't afraid of them. He charges in, swinging his blade, and killing them as they approach him. He ends up getting surrounded, but he isn't bothered, and he slaughters all of them, allowing him to level up. Jinwoo realizes that his sword is about to break, but he knows that weapons are expendable, and he's glad that the fight is over. He checks his inventory, and he realizes that he has already acquired the teleportation stone. But he decides to stay in the dungeon, because he wants to defeat the monsters to get stronger, thinking they will disappear if he teleports away. Jinwoo heads deeper into the dungeon, slaughtering the monsters along the way, as he notes that his battles are becoming easier. We learn that he can assess a monster's level by looking at the color of its name. The monsters with white names are weaker than him, while the ones with red names are stronger. He knows he's making progress, because the wolves used to have a red name, but now it's white. He senses the presence of the boss, and he isn't sure if he can defeat it, but he decides to fight it anyways. He reaches a swamp, and he sees a creature charging at him with incredible speed. He tries to block, but he gets knocked back, and he realizes that his sword is broken. A huge serpent appears, as Jinwoo notes that its name is Orange, so it has the same level as him, and he realizes that its body is covered in scales, so his sword is useless against it. It tries to attack him, and he manages to dodge, but he wonders how he can defeat it. It starts pursuing him, and he struggles to avoid its attacks, but it hits him with its tail, blowing him away. A train is about to crash into him, so he dashes away, and he barely manages to avoid it. He thinks he still isn't strong enough, wondering how hard he has to work to escape his life of constant ridicule. He continues to struggle against the serpent, as he recalls that he's considered as the weakest hunter in the world, thinking the weak are always powerless against the strong, so he's determined to become stronger. He charges at the serpent, evading its attack, and plunging his sword into its scales. It tries to attack him, but he avoids it, and he leaps into the air, as the serpent tries to eat him. But he suddenly disappears, and the serpent realizes that he's clinging to its body. Jinwoo uses his strength to crush its scales, and it appears to be in pain, so it smashes him against a pillar. But he doesn't let go, and he presses down on the serpent's neck with all his might, causing it to bleed, as he continues to tighten his grip. The serpent runs out of blood, and it crashes to the ground, as the system informs Jinwoo that he has defeated the boss. He receives a powerful dagger as a reward, along with a vial of the serpent's venom, thinking its effects are terrifying, because it permanently reduces strength to increase defense. With the boss defeated, the dungeon returns to its original state, and Jinwoo leaves the subway, wondering where everyone went, as a soldier approaches him, telling him that civilians aren't allowed in the area. But the soldier sees him carrying a sword, realizing he's a hunter, so he apologizes for being rude, saying he will escort him to the area. Jinwoo notes that the city is in ruins, and the soldier tells him that there was a dungeon break, but all of the monsters have been dealt with, except for the boss. He senses a powerful presence, and we see a huge golem fighting a group of hunters, as the civilians watch them from a distance. The hunters struggle against the golem because its defense is ridiculous, so even their most powerful attacks aren't working. Jinwoo arrives, and he notes that they're weak because most of them are only E-ranked. He realizes that Jui is with them, and she tries to cast a spell, but she recalls what happened in the dungeon, so she loses her composure. Jinwoo realizes that she still hasn't gotten over the trauma, and he decides to help them, knowing they're fighting against a D-rank boss, which is weaker than the one he just defeated. The hunters are about to get overwhelmed, but Jinwoo launches his sword with incredible strength, and it hits the golem, creating an opening for the other hunters, who use the opportunity to take it out. One of them wonders how they were able to defeat it, because their attacks weren't working, and he sees the sword on the ground, so he inquires about it. A soldier points to Jinwoo, but he's nowhere to be found, and we see that he has already left the scene, because he wasn't expecting his attack to have such an impact. Back in the hospital, Jinwoo continues his workout routine, and a nurse enters his room, but she's surprised to see that he's already ripped, wondering how he was able to achieve it in just a few days. She informs him that he's going to get discharged, but as he's about to leave his room, she asks for his number, because she can't resist his charm. We meet the S-rank hunter Beck, who is invited as a special guest in a TV show. The interviewer asks him about his daily routine, so he tells her that he's always training, because he doesn't want his combat skills to get rusty. He reveals that he used to work as a firefighter, so he knows how to respond to dangerous situations. Gina is watching the interview, but she realizes that she's already late, and Jinwoo tells her to be careful on her way to school. She notices he looks different, thinking it must be because of his training, and she's about to leave for school, but he gives her an umbrella, telling her to stay safe. After she leaves, he checks his daily quest, as he notes that he gained muscle mass, thinking it must be because his stats increased. He notes that he still hasn't distributed his ability points, thinking he needs more than just strength to defeat powerful monsters, so he decides to use them to improve his agility and perception. At that moment, he receives a call from the landlord, who tells him that his rent is due, so he promises to pay immediately. He knows that he has become stronger, so he thinks he'll be able to earn more money by raiding dungeons, but he notes that it's difficult to find a good job, because his rank is still at E. He thinks about undergoing a reevaluation, thinking it will allow him to raise his rank and earn more money. But it would attract too much attention, knowing his case is unusual, so he ultimately decides against it. He's surprised when he sees a high-paying job for rank E hunters, so he rushes over to the location and completes his daily quest along the way. He meets a hunter named Donsuk, who explains that his party only has 6 members, and they need 8 people to enter the C-rank dungeon, so they're hiring hunters to fill the slots. But he mentions that Jinwoo won't share the spoils, because he won't be fighting the monsters, but they will pay him a large commission for joining them. Jinwoo accepts the job, and Donsuk orders him to carry their luggage, but he wonders why the party has no healer, so Donsuk tells him that they're already used to fighting without one. He finds this strange, and he reads the contract, realizing that they won't be liable for anything that happens to him in the dungeon, but he signs it anyways. A D-ranked hunter named Yujin approaches him, revealing that he also accepted the job, and everyone is impressed with his equipment, thinking he must be from a rich family. They prepare to enter the gate, as everyone notes that it looks enormous, but Jinwoo explains that the size of the gate doesn't matter, and the Hunters Association classifies it based on the amount of magic power it exudes. They enter the gate, and they realize that the dungeon is too dark, so the mage Kyuwon lightens up the area, allowing them to see what's inside. But Jinwoo notes that it reminds him of the temple because it's pitch black, and there are no monsters blocking their path. As they head deeper into the dungeon, they hear monsters approaching, so everyone prepares for battle. But they're surrounded by openings, so they panic, wondering where the monsters will come from. But Jinwoo observes his surroundings, and he warns them that the ants will attack from above. So they're able to respond on time, and they start fighting the ants, as Jinwoo notes that they're used to working together. He observes that Yujin lacks strength, but his equipment allows him to make up for it, and he's glad that everyone is doing well, but he admits that he's frustrated, because the job is too easy. They're able to defeat the ants, and they start searching for magic gems, as Donsuk wonders how Jinwoo was able to predict where the ants would come from. He mentions that it was just a gut feeling, and Kyuwon notes that the ants have bite marks, thinking they were attacked by a powerful monster. Yu Jin is happy that he was able to kill a monster, revealing that this is his first mission, so his father bought him expensive gear, but Jinwoo warns him to be cautious, because he can sense that something's wrong. At the White Tiger Guild, we see the hunters in the gym when they notice an explosion, but they maintain their composure, because it happens all the time, knowing their guildmaster is just training. We see that Beck blew a massive hole into a boulder, but he mentions that it isn't even a warm-up, ordering his subordinates to clean it up. We return to the dungeon, as Jinwoo continues to carry the luggage for the group. But he thinks that Donsuk's party is suspicious, because they have no healer despite their excellent teamwork. They see injured ants along the way, thinking the boss should be nearby, and as they proceed deeper into the dungeon, they reach an area surrounded by mana crystals, thinking they're going to be rich. Yu Jin reads Jinwoo's contract, and he explains that the crystals don't count as spoils, so Jinwoo must receive a portion of it. Donsuk agrees with him, but he reveals that the boss is guarding the crystals, and they know that the dungeon will close after it's defeated. So he suggests mining the crystals before they deal with it, knowing it's still sleeping, but Donsuk explains that they left their mining tools, so they need to leave the dungeon to get it. They leave Yu Jin and Jinwoo inside, and Donsuk orders Kwon to block the path, so he uses his magic, causing an explosion which seals the entrance. Jinwoo realizes that they have been betrayed, as he recalls that Song-chi warned him that the crime rate for dungeon raids is high, because there's no way to tell if a hunter has been murdered in a dungeon. Yu Jin blames himself for talking about the contract, but Jinwoo knows that Donsuk's party was planning to kill them from the very beginning. The spider approaches them, and Yu Jin promises to protect Jinwoo, who notes that the spider is stronger than the bosses he defeated so far. He believes that he's no match for it, but he recalls his encounter with the statue of God, knowing the spider is nothing compared to it. So he tells Yu Jin to stand back, as he prepares to fight the boss. Donsuk's companion wonders why they're using the spider to eliminate Jinwoo and Yu Jin, so he explains that he didn't want to risk waking it up. He thinks that it will go to sleep after it eats them, and he reveals that there's a small path above the cave, planning to use it to return, as he mentions that Jinwoo and Yu Jin are as good as dead. Yu Jin thinks that Jinwoo doesn't stand a chance, because he's just an E-rank hunter, but he refuses to back down, thinking he's strong enough to defeat it. He charges in, attacking with ridiculous speed, and Yu Jin is surprised to see this. But we cut to Gun Yi, as he tells Jinchul that he's exhausted because of his meetings. So Jinchul invites him to a sparring match, thinking it will help him unwind. He accepts it, saying he's out of his prime, but as they start training, Jinchul struggles to hit him, and he counters with a devastating blow, allowing him to win the match. Jinchul thanks Gun Yi for his guidance, saying he's amazing, because he's incredibly strong for his age. He tells Jinchul that his moves have improved, advising him not to neglect his training, because it will help him survive dangerous situations. We return to Jinwoo, as he tries to cut the spider's legs, but he realizes that its armor is too tough, and he notes that its attacks are deadly, thinking it could kill him in one hit. He struggles against it, as Yu Jin wonders how he can move so fast, thinking he must have intentionally lowered his ranking by controlling his magic. But Yu Jin becomes afraid, because few hunters are capable of doing this, and they're usually psychopaths who take pleasure in killing. Jinwoo realizes that his fatigue is increasing, knowing it will cause his movements to slow down, so he thinks about using his dagger's special abilities to end the fight. He sees the spider's head, thinking it's the weak spot, so he charges in, but the spider spits acid, forcing him to retreat. He knows that he needs to close the distance, so he uses his dash skill, allowing him to move even faster. He attacks the spider's head, and it has no effect, but he refuses to give up. So he continues his assault, but his fatigue accumulates, causing him to slow down, and he crashes to the ground. The spider is about to strike the finishing blow, but he uses his full recovery, allowing him to dodge it, and he launches a surprise attack, stabbing the spider's eye. The dagger's ability activates, paralyzing the spider and draining its health, as Jinwoo continues his relentless assault. It crashes to the ground, and the system mentions that the boss has been defeated, but Yu Jin can't believe his eyes, thinking he was right about Jinwoo. So he tells Jinwoo to relax, as he mines the crystals, but at that moment, Donsuk's party arrives, realizing that the boss has been defeated. They think Yu Jin was the one who killed it, and Dan-suk tells him to eliminate Jinwoo, saying they will spare his life if he obeys them. But he refuses, preparing to fight them, so they start approaching him, and at that moment, Jinwoo receives an urgent quest, telling him to eliminate them. He's surprised to see this, realizing that the system is telling him to kill people, but Kwon suddenly attacks him, blowing him away. We meet the hunter Hegan, as she starts talking with her friends, asking them how they're doing. Her friend reveals she entered an A-rank dungeon to train, but it was cleared in an instant, because Cha easily defeated the monsters. The girl thinks they are lucky to be in the large guilds, and she mentions a rumor, saying there are teams with an abnormally high casualty rate. We return to the dungeon, as everyone thinks that Jinwoo is dead, but we see that he's still alive, and he recalls that he lives in a world where only the strong survive, wondering how he forgot about this. He's about to lose consciousness, but he realizes that the system wants him to survive, so it's telling him to fight for his life. He gets back up, surprising everyone, as he realizes that he has to be strong, because the weak people will have everything taken from them. They call him the weakest hunter in the world, but he asks them if they're ready to face the consequences, as he unleashes an ominous aura. Dan-suk's companion approaches him, reminding him that he's just an A-rank hunter, but he suddenly kills the man, slicing his head off. Everyone is surprised to see this, wondering when he pulled out his weapon, and he notes that he just murdered someone, but he knows that he did it to save his own life. Dan-suk's party attacks him, but he manages to defend himself, slaughtering them as they try to kill him. Kwon tries to blast him, but he suddenly disappears, and lands a counterattack, taking him out in an instant. Dan-suk freaks out, realizing that Jinwoo was hiding his true powers, but he mentions that he's stronger than his companions, as he uses his skill to strengthen his body. He believes that Jinwoo relies on his speed, and he's using his dagger to deal damage, but he knows that it won't work against him, because his body is as hard as steel. He charges in, trying to avenge his companions, but Jinwoo smashes him against the ground, as he realizes that he doesn't stand a chance. So he starts begging for his life, telling Jinwoo that he can have the crystals, but he mentions that Dan-suk tried to kill him 3 times, reminding him that no one will know what happens in the dungeon. Jinwoo slices his head off, allowing him to complete the urgent quest, but the dungeon starts collapsing as the gate is about to close. They're able to escape in time, and they report that Dan-suk's party was killed during the raid. Jinwoo realizes that he received a reward for completing the urgent quest, and he acquires a skill called Murderous Intent, which weakens the enemies by causing them to panic. The official believes them, and she judges them based on their equipment, thinking Yujin was the one who defeated the boss, while Jinwoo did nothing to help, but Yujin thanks him for saving his life. Jinchul receives a report about the incident, but finds it suspicious when he hears that Jinwoo was involved, and as he looks at the file, he recognizes Dan-suk, because he's the brother of a famous hunter. Jinwoo returns home, and Gina is happy to see he bought food. She asks him how his raid went, but he thinks back to how he didn't even hesitate when he killed the hunters. He wonders if there's something wrong with him, but his sister snaps him out of it. He decides not to worry about it, thinking he needs to prioritize getting stronger to protect his family. As he drinks his beer, he gets a notification of a debuff, but it seems to get cleansed. He keeps drinking in his room, but realizes he can't get drunk, and sees that one of his quest rewards gives him regeneration and immunity to status effects. He gets a call from Yujin, and they meet up at a cafe. Yujin sees him as his boss, and says he's putting together a team, but Jinwoo instantly turns him down. Jinwoo prepares to leave, but Yujin begs him to listen. He explains he's trying to become licensed as a guild master, but it requires 20 raids worth of experience. His father owns one of the country's biggest construction companies, and they are looking to form a guild. Jinwoo thinks about all the treasures that can be found in dungeons, so he isn't surprised with their plan. Yujin mentions his father wants an S-rank hunter to be the guild master, with his brother as second in command. Jinwoo notes that there are only 7 S-rank hunters in the whole country, and all of them are already in guilds besides one named Min, who's currently retired. Jinwoo realizes they plan to poach one from another guild, but he warns that it's a bad idea. Yujin reveals his brother can't be the guild master because he didn't awaken as a hunter, so it's his chance to take his place. Yujin points out how they can help each other, Jinwoo can participate in raids while hiding his power, while Yu Jin can convince his father of his success if he only has help from an E-rank hunter. He shows Jinwoo the building they plan to use as the guild's headquarters, valuing it at around $20 million, and he offers it in exchange for his help on 19 more raids. Jinwoo considers the offer, but thinks that since he's the only person that can level up, he will eventually reach S rank, so 20 million would be nothing when that time comes, and he ends up turning down the offer. Meanwhile in America, we meet Don-suk's brother Don-soo, and he hears the news about his brother. He knows his brother was murdered. Looking at the information on the two survivors, he plans to fly back to Korea to find them, but his assistant tells him his schedule is full, so he agrees to wait, hoping the two will survive until he has time for them. Jinwoo goes running with his sister, and he wonders what she would do if she had $20 million, but she finds it unrealistic. As Jinwoo goes to complete his daily quest, he realizes that the counter can go beyond his requirement. He decides to test the limit, and realizes he can do double the requirement. It turns into a secret quest, and he gets the option to receive a blessed loot box. It turns into another key, which seems to lead to the demon's castle, with a difficulty rank of S. He's shocked when he sees that it contains the ingredients for the elixir of life, and he thinks he can use it to save his mother. He opens the dungeon, revealing a flaming portal, wondering if he can really take on an S-rank dungeon, but we see he saved a teleportation stone just in case. As he approaches the entrance, he's confronted by a Cerberus, but he's determined to get stronger. He uses his dash to approach the beast, and he starts slashing at it, but it barely does any damage. He uses his murderous intent skill, but it has no effect. His arm gets bitten, and he loses a third of his HP. He manages to get back up, but the Cerberus uses a skill that doubles its stats. Jinwoo is unable to react, and he takes another hit. He gets smashed continuously, and we see his health is getting low. He prepares to use his teleportation stone, but the Cerberus attacks again, causing him to drop it. He wonders how he can survive, and he decides to try the snake's poison, remembering how he has debuff immunity, so he's able to get rid of the negative effect. The Cerberus lunges at him, taking another bite out of him, but he survives, and sees that the Cerberus's skill has ended. He rushes at it, and he's finally able to do some damage. The beast bites down on him, but he barely survives, and he stabs the dog's eye. He stabs it repeatedly, and he manages to kill the beast. He levels up after the fight, allowing him to heal, and he's glad that it's over. He receives another key to unlock the demon's castle, as well as the formula for the elixir of life, which requires 3 items from within the castle. Jinwoo realizes he needs to get stronger before he takes it on, but he swears to be back for it soon. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.